How are you? I would love to learn how to make that fade. All right. You can see perhaps the title, A New Life. Now, if you have questions about any of this stuff, we don't really, and I will post these over the next 5 days or so, starting tomorrow, the replays during the day. So, anyway, if you have questions, there's my email address. You can also look here, that might answer your questions. The blogs, the videos, there's some really cool videos on there. Anyway, a new life. We talked about trauma. We talked about healing trauma. Let me read from Peter Levine's Healing Trauma. That's pretty concise. Page 10. I believe not only that trauma is curable, but that the healing process can be a catalyst for profound awakening. A portal opening to emotional and genuine spiritual transformation. Oh, it's more than that. And spiritual can be loosely defined. Some of the things that and what I wanted to try to create for you tonight and is for you to imagine. My financial educator has a game that anytime we do a retreat, she has everybody play this game, and it's an imagination game. And so she says, imagine that you are making $10,000 a month. That's how much you have. That does not cover your immediate expenses, which, I mean, it's $10,000 a month. Okay, that's pretty rich. But basically, it's how would you spend the money on charity, furthering your investments, education, short-term fun, long-term fun. Yeah. And then what happens if you make $100,000 a month to do those things, and then $1 million a month to do those things? You know, it's called the billionaires game, and there are billionaires. They have that kind of money easily. Anyway, it's an imagination game, and it challenges you to think big. Because if you're making, if you've got $1 million to spend, your household expenses aren't what mine are. That's for sure. I would have a staff. I'd probably have a bigger house, so maybe a small staff, but to run by businesses. All right, I have all kinds of. I want you to learn to imagine what it would be like to live a billionaire life. How would you be physically? How would you be emotionally? And I used to have the slides for all of these that we could kind of imagine some of the stuff. What would your life be like cognitively? What would your life be like socially? What would your life be like spiritually? And how would you be living your life in your environment? And it's interesting between this book here, his book called Healing Trauma, which I think he wrote after Waking the Tiger. In both of those editions, he talks about two things: people who get identified with their trauma symptoms. I mentioned this yesterday. I'm proud to be a survivor, but they can't move on from that. So think of a money line. All right. We'll say the middle is my nose. And then everything over here is negative numbers. Everything over here is positive numbers. Here's the survivor. You've gone from here to here. Now let's take that illustration and we'll turn it into a money metaphor. You were way in debt. And you're going to get right to about here, and you're still in debt, but not a whole lot, maybe. Hoorah! But that's where you stay. Rather than going over to here. Yeah. Because sometimes what some of these things, these belief systems that we've adopted over here in our trauma state prevent us from going to here, which is part of the reason my educator has us play these games to begin to manifest what these are. Can you, okay, so, and I don't think I can call them up quickly enough, but learning how to navigate your own emotions. Oh, I know what I can do. Da, 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 da. All right, these are different facets of resilience. I shared Monday with stress what that means, and that will be posted tomorrow. All right, somatic resilience is knowing where the body is in space and time, being able to read and understand the signals of the body relative to physical needs, wants, and feelings, which is called interoception, and responding to those signals appropriately. It is integrated embodiment, direct experience, functional strength, flexibility, and movement. Emotional resilience is being able to feel more than one emotion at a time and being able to name them, it or them, and to discern their intensity, hear what the emotions are saying, and include that information in decision making if needed. That's what it means to navigate your emotions. Cognitive resilience is the ability to observe, to ask questions based on listening. Just close your eyes here and hear what I'm saying. Cognitive resilience is the ability to observe, ask questions based on listening, identify assumptions and relative emotions, consider possibilities including abstractions and complexities, plan, learn quickly from experience, and rest in the unknown. Social resilience is the ability to determine who is safe and who is not. So pay attention to your emotions through this process, where you think you might be, some of the things that you need to work on. So being able to determine who is safe and who is not, and that's called neuroception. Successfully build relationships and navigate social environments. The ability to empathize and not enmesh. Activate attunement and influence with self-presentation. To be able to sit or come to the table and eat in companionship, to savor and to linger. Emotional resilience, the ingredients to spiritual resilience, include the ability to find a purpose, deconstructing unbeneficial beliefs, asking existential questions, why, determine and setting values and ethics, having self-awareness, aspiration, being inspired by vision and values, preferably your own, appreciating beauty and excellence. And for me, I mean, I have some friends who have some excellent business going. I can appreciate what they're doing. I have friends who are musicians, and I can appreciate what I hear from them. And I have some friends whose art hang on my walls. All right. Appreciating, and that's kind of what awe is. Beauty and excellence. I mean, think about some of the statue of David by Michelangelo. And I'm thinking of another one. I can't remember it right off the top of my head, but the figure is in a very sheer whatever. And the way that the sculptor caught the wrinkles and created the wrinkles in a stone, and some of the features that Michelangelo got in his David of where veins and things like that are just carving this stuff without electricity. Anyway, being able to stand there and look at that. And David, I believe, is 12 feet tall. So that meant he put all of that into perspective. All right. Appreciating beauty and excellence and moving with the flow of interconnectedness. Now, I see two fields of environmental resilience. One is how I express these resiliences in me. And do I fully inhabit my space, my own space, the space that my body lives in? And then concentrically out beyond me. How do I move in the world? How do I pulsate with it? Do I charge and discharge evenly? Do I flow? Am I part of the life and death of the ecosystem I exist in? Now, the spiritual one, let me just say something about that. I'm going to read you another definition. Mind, spirit, consciousness. And this is where I look at it. The dynamic, embodied, alchemic gold, dynamic, remember, of our energy, feelings, perceptions, intuitions, senses, cognitions, memories, desires, and imaginations. I'm not stuck on the term spiritual. I came up with this definition based on things that I've experienced. Anyway, imagine being able to live that way in freedom. Now, I don't know about you, and there's one of the other messages in Levine's books is that essentially, I should look that one up and read that to you. Let's see if I can find it. It is trauma is a disconnection. No, I don't seem to be able to find it at the moment. So it's a disconnection from, if it starts in your childhood, it's a disconnection from your own body. Because our initial infancy life is completely sensational. No words, no thoughts into words, no memories in words. It's all sensation, all body. Okay? So what we have going is this disconnection when it gets too overwhelming from our own body first. What do you think does not stem from that in terms of development? Yeah. So there's the disconnection gets disrupted to myself and to my caregiver. So let me see if I can remember these stages. Attunement and attachment. Okay, those have been disrupted already as well. Those follow hard on the heels. If there's no attunement, there will be no attachment. And then I don't have any ability to develop trust. That's stage number 3. Stage number 4 is self-regulation. I don't have self-regulation requires those other 3. And then when you hit this teenage stage, when the hormone train comes in, now there's the love and sex thing. I haven't got a foundation for that. So guess where that's going to go, what that's going to look like. Yeah. You see what I'm saying here? There is this, when this stuff happens, there's a big disconnection. And when we have these disconnections, you get to that teen love stage. Wow, okay, we don't know anything about forming relationships. We don't, because we're not, certainly our caregivers aren't suddenly on the page with us. So we have disconnections from our caregivers. We have disconnections from families, from friends. I ended up completely aloof, didn't know how to develop relationships because whoever taught that, which is weird. I had it demonstrated, but nobody taught me the nuances. Nobody kind of nudged me along. My dad never said to me, "Oh, you got a girlfriend? Okay, how you treating her? What are you gonna do?" Completely absent in that regard. Completely. So was my mom. I would have expected her to grab me by the collar and say, "You get a woman pregnant before you move out of this house." And actually, it would have been this way. That would have been my mom more than my dad, because that was my mom. Anyway, all of the stuff that can happen this profound life. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? When we've lived with these symptoms, and I know you know what they feel like. I lived with them for 58 years. And I started healing when I was at my 58th year. Now, did I have instant healing? God, no. It doesn't work that way. And it took a while before I even began to sense anything. But anyway, this is not a blind faith or baseless hope, because as you do the work, you will experience the change. And I assure you, it is very profound, hugely profound. The reason I read you those definitions is because those were my experiences after I started to heal. Before I started to heal, oh my God. Addictions, yeah. Complete emotional jazzball with no ability to navigate them, you bet. Cognitions, oh, it's so easy to attach yourself to a meme and think that's right. Ha! No ability to think clearly. I had to teach myself that. Khan Academy's got great courses. You can just go there and teach yourself that kind of stuff. But cognition is more than just clear thinking. Let me tell you that. And so there's a lot that goes into this kind of thing. There's a lot that moves us. And what's interesting, and I don't know about anybody else, I lived third person most of my life. It's like I was watching myself on a movie set. I was not integrated. That whole disconnection is DIS with a dash integration. And when you're disintegrated, there is no whole me here. And so we identify by attaching to these things out here. I was a hippie attached to that, and all that represents, the whole drug scene, the free love scene, free sex, and then music. I got to admit, we had the best music. Sorry, but we did. Anyway, so we identify with all these things that really are trauma responses. And as we heal, okay, if it's taken too long, you're going to start attaching to that kind of stuff too. I ice my face every morning at 10 o'clock. That's attaching to a trauma relief, not a healing. Anyway, healing is not a blind faith or a baseless hope. The power is in your own body already. So if we're working together, I'm just showing you how to do that. Oh, and there's a lot more that goes into that. I want you to catch a vision of what it would be like to live a profound life, emotionally, cognitively, physically. Yeah, there will be changes. For the most part, you might be living with pathologies, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The social life, the ability, you know what it's like to be able to see somebody in the store and say, wow, how are you, or to be impacted because a friend of mine just died last week. Oh, anyway, I miss him. I worked with him. I acted with him. And a lot of people, myself included, wish they were a lot more like him. He's becoming a role model to me. In any event, a profound life. The reason I want to live that way is so that when I'm gone, the community thinks the same way about me rather than, or just, okay, bummer. So if you want your life to be a legacy, to leave an impact, that can happen. That takes a little bit of, and there's some risk. There's some risk. The whole social thing, guess what you're going to have to do? Hi, how are you? My name's Lucky. Yeah, it does take a bit of risk. But in any event, And, if you're dating going into that, you might say, hey, can we get together for a cup of coffee or go out for a light snack, lunch? And you'll hear, no, I'm not interested. Okay. Because, hey, that is very personal. And you have learned how to handle that rejection. It is not the end of your world. So not only did you get the courage to take the risk, you now have the emotional stability to handle the rejection. Wow. Does that feel good? So it's getting out of things and getting into things. And this is not, like I said, it's not a 2-week process, not a 2-month process. It is definitely a profound life, and you're going to love it. And if you take the time to do the work, the stuff will happen. It's quite exciting. And it's integrated. I don't live my life third person anymore, which means my memory's changed. That is completely awesome. I get to remember things not as if I wasn't there, but I remember things because I was. That's quite cool. That's a great feeling. My emotions are here rather than stulted, buried, whatever. Okay. I don't have to get myself involved with any other kinds of things. My cognitions can be, I don't get jazzballed half as easy. An interesting note I want to say here. There's in this book, and I believe it's in Awakening the Tiger, he says that trauma is harder to heal, easier to prevent. Yeah, I'm kidding you not. And I'll let me share a slide. I'll tell you why I say that. I've used this slide quite a bit, and I did last night. Here's what that means. When you heal, you come back into this green zone here. All right. It takes work to get there. I'm going to say for me, about 7 years. I started when I was 58. And I was dealing with developmental trauma, which meant from my infancy. And so once you get down here, once you've done the work to get through all of this stuff, and I want to say, I'll use the British word, sorted it out. But you use your body with the tool in your body, and you work through some of this stuff. Interestingly enough, some of the stuff will just solve on its own, this old trauma stuff. Some of it you might have to work through because we're going to try putting on some new things. Okay. It's not familiar to, hi, I'm Lucky. It is for me now. I can do that quite easily. On the other hand, a couple years ago, not happening. So in any event, when you're going through this stuff, it's not a putting on, it's not whitewashing. It's an actual genuine thing from inside because you've integrated. And once you've moved down into the social engagement zone, that's where it's difficult to get out of it. That's what Levine means by trauma prevention. So this image you're looking at is the polyvagal response, which was theorized by Stephen Porges. Dr. Berselli's website is called Trauma Prevention, which I find fascinating. And it's not that, yes, even though Levine says trauma is not a life sentence, I didn't even know what the heck it was until I was like 56, maybe 57. Okay, well, anyway, there's that. The healing also is not a life sentence. I don't see anybody for it. I was with my provider for a year, and every week we had a session. She never asked me about my events, ever. Not once. And it was actually a little over a year. I think it was about 13 months and a week or two, the best I can remember. Because at that point, she said, you can do this work on your own now. That's so okay, we'll talk about that later. Once you're in that green zone, you have the ability then to stay there. You won't get rid of the stress response, no doubt about that. If you get in an accident, that ought to be scary. You might go, whoa, and you'll get out of the car, you'll start to tremor a little bit, you might cry a little bit because it was scary. That's natural. That is not unnatural. That's natural. That should happen. When it does, finally you go, okay, that's over. Moving on. Just a car. Nobody else got hurt. We're good. That's how that works. That's what it means when he says it's easier to prevent trauma than it is to heal it, even though healing is not all that difficult. Because once you become integrated like that, yeah, talk about strength. It's not putting on armor, it's being strong on the inside. So there is this, the hope is on solid rock. You're building your foundation on a solid piece of earth. Anyway, I want you to envision what for you would look like a life where what is a profound life to you? All right. I want you to think about it in terms of physically. What would that mean for you physically to live a profound life? What would that look like for you to live emotionally? And maybe you can't even picture that. That's okay. This is where we start. This is where I started. I was a mess. So there's the emotional, there's the cognitive. Where would you like to apply that? Where do you feel inept and or unable in that regard? Same thing with emotions, because emotions are based on relationships. You see this pattern? Yeah. The cognitive, the emotion, the physicality, being able to be present for relationships. That is critical. That is critical. Now we can get into these what would that look like for you? So maybe at some point, let's just say that cribbage is your thing. Is there a cribbage tournament near you? Okay, cool. You know, I've got hobbies. And so some of the people that I associate with now are people I teach martial arts. So, okay, I can hang around with some of these people, especially those my age. And now we're starting to move into, you might like bird watching. I do. See that stuff right there? That's a pair of binoculars. And in fact, I saw a yellow-rumped warbler in my tree here. And man, they do not like to stay still. But I was looking out the window. I was like, I think that's a warbler. Burp. Yeah, well, it's even more fun. I sometimes like to get up, go out to some pond or, because there's migration patterns and then there's the young ones and so forth and so on. Okay, or maybe that's boring. Horseback riding. There's any number. Oh man, that list is endless. So, ham radio. Yeah, believe it or not, that is a ham radio. And when I was a kid, they were considerably different. But anyway, there's a whole world of stuff out there. So there's those relationships, and you start to develop them with other ham radio operators. Then there's the spiritual thing, and that could just simply be a quest. Doesn't mean you have to settle on one. You could make your own. All kinds of fascinating possibilities. How you live in your own home. I've decided that wall behind me is going to be kind of like a forest green, maybe not horribly dark green, but a forest green. I, I had plans for a red wall and plans for a blue wall. So expressing yourself in your environment. The art, I said from friends, is all downstairs on the wall. That will not be the blue wall, but hey, it probably should be white just to make sure that they're all looking good. But anyway, in any event, you get my point. And then how I express myself in the world. For years, I did not wear a red shirt. And the reason why is because I read somewhere that for somebody with my color scheme, blah, 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 red, orange, yellow, completely unacceptable. Okay. And I decided to violate that rule. I did. And guess what? I cannot tell you how many times people say, that you look good in that color. I've got a dark purple shirt. I get the same response. You look great in that color. And okay. I mean, it's a purple. There's no mistaking it for blue. So it's not an indigo. And, wow, I look good in this. When I was told or I read that it's not, nope, you can't wear that one. So, okay. I just kind of wear what I want to express a mood. How that works? So coming into that integratively, I want you to imagine, I want you to find where the roadblocks are, because we have to dismantle those, right? Anyway, longer than I wanted, but hey, there it is. In any event, I wish you well. If you need to get a hold of me, you want to talk about healing, there's my address. All right. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great night. I will be back tomorrow night. In fact, tomorrow night is okay then. A little bit about the company itself. And then on Friday, we'll talk about what the program, actually doing the program, the healing program looks like. And if there's any questions, we will handle the questions and answer on that day. All right. Have a good night. Bye.